Welcome. Today I'll be showing you how to make a data acquisition system, a GUI, GUI, however you want to pronounce it, in C++ using code blocks and SDL, OpenGL, and Arduino. The motivation behind this project is the ability to display information in the form of images rather than text, and I'll show you a couple samples. This one is from the Cosworth engine test stand. They're running the engine up to 20,000 RPM. You can see they have a full digital graphic user interface. The next image is the dashboard of the Lamborghini Aventador. You see there, it's also all digital. Of course, it's going to take a lot of artistic liberties and skill. These other two photos are from enterprisedashboard.com. This is an example of another project that I was working on for the purpose of data acquisition. As you can see, there are three elements in this particular video. There is the bar graph at the bottom left with the green-red indicator on either side, and the three green-red indicators and dial above. Of the three, the dial is the hardest to do because you have to use the trig functions from the math.h header file. After we set up our project, I'll show you how to create a dial that works when you turn a potentiometer on your breadboard circuit. I'll start off by going over the Windows installation. I already have everything installed on my computer, so I'll try and show you guys how to do it without screwing anything up. What you first want to do is go to Google and type in SDL. And you'll choose the first option, simple direct media layer. Under documentation, or not documentation, under downloads you want to go to SDL 1.2. You'll want to scroll down to the development libraries. Under Windows you'll have SDL Devel 1.2 blah 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 Ming W32TAR.gz. This is the one that you'll want because we will be working with code blocks. If you have Visual C++, then you'll want to get this one. We'll go ahead and save this on our computer. Just put it anywhere on the desktop. Will be just fine. While that's downloaded, we can search Google for code blocks. First item, or you can go to downloads. You'll want to choose the download the binary release option. And you'll scroll down and you'll see code blocks 10.05 Ming W setup. I chose the first download source, and then the download should begin automatically. You'll want to save this on the desktop with your other file, or if you have it in My Documents, which is a better recommendation, but for all intents and purposes, just make sure it's with the STL file that we downloaded before. SDL includes OpenGL, I think, or I don't know if it's on Windows already, but this is all we need for our little project. Alright, now that we have both files on our desktop, we want to unzip the SDL download that we have. I'm using 7-zip. There's other ones out there, WinRAR. As long as get the files intact, no errors, no faulty files. Let's take a look at what we got in the SDL folder. The main important things to see are the include and the lib folders, but you can also take a look around at the documentation that comes with it. Also up top you'll notice a bin file that has the sdl.dll file in there. Once you get everything set up, you got to make sure that the sdl.dll file is in the same folder as your exe or your main folder. If you're running the program directly from the exe, just make sure it's in the same folder, or if you're running it from the compiler, make sure it's next to the main.cpp source file. Go ahead and click the code blocks installation next to this part I agree, blah blah blah. Make sure the main compiler suite is checked. That's all we really need. Once it's set up on your computer, we're going to open up code blocks, and I'll show you how to create a new project. We want to create a new project rather than just a main.cpp file. Actually, before we start our new project, we got to go to Settings, Compiler, and Debugger for the global compiler settings. We want to click the linkers or search directories tab, and then just make sure the directory for the SDL folder, the include/SDL folder, is in there. You see I have Racing GUI SDL-1.2.14 include SDL. Make sure it's the SDL folder that you have in there, and you'll want to click add and then add that folder. Just make sure that folder's under here. Click the linker tab, and likewise you'll click add. Make sure the lib file that we saw before is on this part. We want to start our new project. Go to File, New, Project, and then select Empty Project. We're going to title the project Monitor, as in like a device monitor. We're gonna want to save, or I already have a monitor folder in My Documents, but we're gonna want to save it in My Documents. Click Next, and then make sure that the compiler is the GNU GCC compiler, and that those two buttons are checked. We're gonna want to add a main.cpp file next to the monitor.cbp code blocks project file. This is a funky way of doing it, but I went to the folder where the code blocks project is and created a new file called main.cpp from a text file. You can do this in code blocks, but the way I was doing it before was kind of confusing. So once we got our main.cpp file next to the monitor.cbp, we want to add file main.cpp, and just make sure that you're using debug in the release and that your project looks like this. It should have the workspace, and then below monitor, and then below that sources, and then main.cpp. So we're going to open our main.cpp and then paste in our code. And now I'm going to go to the top. These are our linker settings. We're going to want to copy that. Right click the project monitor, go to Properties, and Project Build Options, and the linker settings, and then copy that here to the other linker options. Just remembered that part where we have to have the SDL.dll file next to the exe file, which in our case is monitor. We want to go to the folder where our main.cpp is and go to bin, and you see monitor.exe. We want to go to our SDL folder, which in my case is on the desktop. Go to bin, and then copy SDL.dll, and then put that in the folder with monitor.exe. Alright, well, our window shows up, so that means we don't have any errors. Hopefully you guys out there don't have any errors either. As you can see, we have our 3 dial indicators. They're not really moving right now, but they will be after. I'll show you what they look like when they're moving in. Me moving the potentiometers after I go through the code. Since we're making a GUI application, we want to change our build targets. You want to go to Monitor, Properties, Build Targets, and then where you see Console Application, choose GUI Application, and then we should be all set. I'm going to go through the code and show you guys what some of these different parameters mean.